Hey everyone, my name's Nick.
And I'm Ray, and today we're going to be talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Gotta say, huge fan of Lord of the Rings. Ever since I first saw it with the Peter Jackson trilogy, I just fell in love. I ended up reading the books. My dad had them. Then The Hobbit and Silmarillion. I haven't really gone too much into the Unfinished Tales and all the other stuff, but I'm a medium Tolkien nerd, you could say. Not an in-depth, but a medium, so I'm super excited for the series. This is just the expectations based off the trailer and what we know of so far, but I'm pretty optimistic. So from the trailer that was released as of like 2 to 3 weeks ago to today, this is August 6th, I am optimistic still from it. The scenery, CGI, computer graphics, whatever you want to call it, looks really, really, really well done. The cast, for the most part, looks solid. I mean, we're going to be able to tell that when we actually get to watch it. I don't have an issue with any actor as long as they can act, right?
Right. I just want to say, I think the cast to me doesn't really matter right now because honestly, I mean, I don't know anything about them. From what I could see from the trailer, I haven't seen them in anything. So I'm not too sure. But I will say the people that are cast as elves are looking like they should be in the elf race and, hobbits and all of those. So they stylistically, they look like they belong in the parts that they're playing.
All in all, I can't really call the cast into question yet. I haven't seen them. This show has a budget, a pretty big one. What's the budget, Nick?
Reported budget of $465 million just for the first season.
So I'm thinking Amazon wouldn't just go get dog shit actors and actresses right off the bat. I'm hoping they did their due diligence, but again, we'll clarify that later. And then the trailer, the Rings of Power. So this is obviously going to be in creation or in reference to the creation of the Rings of Power, which obviously takes place in the Second Age. And it looks like, in my opinion, they're going to start in kind of the blank slate era. I think it's like 1200 through 1500. It's kind of open to interpretation during the Second Age, which is when Galadriel rises to power and Lorien. And I think they're going to tell that in season 1, the story of Galadriel's rise to power, which is a really good place, in my opinion, to start for the Rings of Power because it encompasses the actual creation of the rings encompasses so much. We're going to have big name characters coming in. Celebrimbor, right? That's going to be fun. Anatar, I wonder who that is. I'm not going to spoil anything. But there's a lot that goes into it and a lot that needs to happen first. So I'm guessing the actual Forging of the Rings is probably going to be the end season. So the other 4 seasons would basically build up to it. All in all, I'm glad if this is starting at Galadriel's rise to power. And I like the actress they picked for Galadriel. I think she can... I mean, you can't replace Cate Blanchett. You can't.
Sure.
So I think they did a good job getting somebody that kind of looks like her a little bit,
Sure. And so from the trailer, the only thing, right, for those of us who have not gone in depth and read the Silmarillion or any of his extra works, in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, not The Hobbit, right? In the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Galadriel is like this feared sorceress. So I really hope that they bring that out and don't just leave her as like this warrior elf type character, because I mean, it just feels odd to me having only seen her as this feared witch of the woods in the Lord of the Rings.
A quick note on that: Galadriel has been described in the Silmarillion as fiercely fighting in moments. One of them was against Fëanor. She fought against, which was during the fall of Noldor. Big, impactful things, which we might see. And with that, Galadriel's a billion years old in Lord of the Rings, right? In the Third Age, she's like forever old. And she's vastly powerful, yes. But that also includes her physical traits. So she could be a warrior, right? It's the same way with like Gandalf. Similar to Gandalf, not exactly the same. So Gandalf's a Maiar. All of his strength is like in the metaphysical plane, right? We'll call it. I forget off the top of my head. And when he was sent to Middle Earth by the Valar, they restricted some of his power. However, he still is a Maiar and still has access to that strength. That's why he was able to take on the Balrog just fine, because physically he's way more powerful. And then when he was reincarnated, they gave him a little bit more of his power back. Essentially, they restricted less. And a lot of Galadriel's strength is kind of in the same plane of existence, if you will. So she physically is more than just normal. Also, I like to see sword fight over, oh, I'm angry. Personally, I just like sword fights. Lord of the Rings does them well. So hopefully they keep it the same. But I will say this, final thought on it. Galadriel has a few moments described as fighting, but she's never labeled as a warrior, for sure. She's not.
Right. And so it seems like they're just kind of riding with that. Oh, she's described as fighting. Let's just kind of expand on this and make her a warrior in this series.
And this is kind of my issue with some of these things. I was watching a video. I forget. I'm not even going to name it. I forget who it was. They went through one of the teaser trailers and was like, oh, this statue is not big enough. It's not in the right place. It's minus points for that. And it's like, dude, give a little bit of, not every adaptation is going to be perfect, right? And honestly, this is the truth here. Everyone needs to lower their fucking expectations a little bit. The Second Age doesn't really have these storylines in place to begin with. So as long as they meet the wickets of what is in the lore, and they get there in a manner that isn't fucking nuts, then is it enjoyable? Sure. Okay, cool. But if they go in there and change, like, oh yeah, no, Celebrimbor didn't create the Elven Rings. It was actually Galadriel, because, you know, this. Then yeah, fuck that shit, right? But
yeah, so if I may jump in here, I think you're totally right in that if you're getting mad that there is a reference to a statue and you think that this statue should have been 100 feet tall, but in the show it's only 50 feet, that's kind of like, okay, come on, you need to back up a little bit and think about what you're complaining about. But since there's so little lore, this is where it's like my expectations. Who is this show for, basically?
Yeah. Because
there's such a big following of the books. And because the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson films are so wildly successful, still to this day, who is it for? So I think this show should probably be aimed at that target audience, right?
I want to point out too, in the Peter Jackson trilogy, right, that is so widely and critically acclaimed, they did make changes to the actual written story. And there are some things that need to be changed. Who cares if it doesn't impact the giant plot? As long as it makes sense, flows well, is written well, we're good to go. However, my expectations for the show are high. It needs to be good. It should be good. It's Lord of the Rings, right? If it bombs and is a dumpster fire, I'll gladly eat my fucking words. Okay. But I'm going to be optimistic here, and I think it's going to do well. I think it's going to be good. I mean, there's no reason for it to fail. Because while there is this big lore that exists, there's this giant world of lore, there isn't the little stories involved in them, right? That's what it's missing, and that's what Amazon has some room to play with. So as long as they don't fuck up the giant lore with it, it should be okay as long as the stories are okay.
Sure, exactly. And so as long as they're going and not ruining lore and backstory for characters that are in like the Lord of the Rings or even the Hobbit, what I think this show needs to do is, and I think it has so far, at least from the trailer, from what I see, it needs to be stylistically similar to Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Ring trilogy. Because that was so successful, I think that they should really go along with that and use that style of characters and film and all that, you know?
Yeah.
So as long as they do that.
Meeting that so far in the trailer.
Yeah, sure. I think everything looks fantastic. And I got to tell you, the graphics better be freaking amazing.
Yeah, right? For fucking however much million an episode.
Yeah. With that huge budget. It's like if it doesn't look amazing, I will immediately be so disappointed. And it's like, what's the point of all this money?
It's gonna be like the Wheel of Time, where they're like,
yeah, that's. I hope not. And so what's funny about, you spoke about that. So we do see some really pale guy doing magic in the trailer, right? Which is why I was like, well, if he's doing magic, then I hope we also see Galadriel doing magic and learning how to do this as well. And same with Gandalf if we end up seeing him, right? And I hope we see other wizards too, right? Because there are 2 extra wizards that we don't see in The Hobbit or in The Lord of the Rings.
2 blue wizards.
Yeah, so I hope we get some showings of that. That would be kind of cool.
There's only one thing I want to see, right? So this is the Second Age, and we know at the end of the Second Age what happens, that giant battle where Sauron gets a little finger cut off. You know, who was there? Elrond. Elrond is technically alive during this.
I mean, he's just as old as her, isn't he? I think he's also like an ancient elf.
He's older than her.
Yeah. Okay. I thought they were. Yeah. They're both very ancient, though.
Yeah, they're a little old. Yeah, Elrond was born in the First Age. Really? They have Hugo Weaving if they show Elrond. That's my whole point.
How could they? He's probably so old now.
They can de-age him. What are you talking about?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, this is a different time, so maybe. But I think that was a big issue with The Hobbit too, is how silly it looked, right? Whenever they tried to bring Aragorn, right? What's his name? Orlando Bloom. They tried to put him in as Aragorn in The Hobbit, and he just looked terrible in CGI. Again, that might just be because of the time it was in, right?
He should have been there.
Correct.
But no, honestly. So the Second Age, the Rings of Power, yeah, it's probably taking place between 1250, 1350, and 1500. So it'll span now 150 years.
One thing that I wish that we saw in the trailer was some visual of a ring at the very least, because the show is called Rings of Power, and it's like I would have liked to at least see a ring.
Well, in the first teaser, you remember they have the forging of a ring.
No, I don't remember. I didn't watch it.
Well, in their first teaser ever, it's forging of a ring, and it's just like parroting what's said, 12 rings were given to the dwarf, or 6 rings were given to the dwarf lords, right? That whole thing.
Speaking of dwarves, I'm a huge fan of the dwarven race. I love dwarves in fantasy. I hate how they look in this. I think they look too silly. It's the same with The Hobbit. I loved how Gimli looked and how the dwarves looked in Lord of the Rings, and I think The Hobbit took them to a too silly, cartoony version. In the Lord of the Rings, the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings, Gimli, and then we get a brief showing of other dwarves, but I think they look great. They're like short, they're stocky, they're powerful, and they look mean. I'm just saying, it's like a small little gripe. I think they just look silly.
Oh, no, I agree. I think they could have a little bit more tenacity to them.
So the story on this seems to be
the forging of the Great Rings.
So from the trailer, it's not looking like that. Or at least I don't see that. I don't know that.
Okay,
on the trailer,
if we're talking the trailer itself, then yeah.
I'm just saying the only thing I'm seeing from the trailer is the impending war with Sauron.
Okay, so honestly, this trailer to me is showing the rise of Galadriel to power in Lorien. That's what it's looking like to me. And it's a good setup for more than just one season for the Forging of the Rings, because so much goes into the Forging of the Rings. So during this, we are going to see Fëanor. You're going to see Galadriel, right? And Fëanor is the one who created the Silmarils. We're going to see Celebrimbor, who created the Rings of Power with Annatar. You'll find out who Annatar is. I won't spoil that. And the fall of Noldor, essentially, right? This is going to have so many cool moments in it, potentially, if they do it right. So if they follow the big parts of these scripts properly, they're fucking good, because there's a lot of fun you can have here. But so, final thoughts on our expectations for the September 2nd first episode of Lord of the Rings of Power.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
My thoughts is, like I said, I don't think I said this. First off, the music better be fantastic. If they don't have an amazing music score, I will be immediately upset.
Same.
Let's just say that they've got really big shoes to fill in that.
That's
So
unfair, though. That's following, in my opinion, the best soundtrack of any movie ever.
it
So
is
good
it is
luck.
unfair. It is unfair, but they have a huge budget and they better have spent a good portion on their.
Plus, they can reprise a lot of their pieces, anyways. Like the Bridge of Khazad-dûm.
Sure.
We're going to be in Khazad-dûm, so they can use it.
Yeah, I hope that they do. I would love to hear. I would love to hear that, and I hope that the story is good, right? Because they don't have a lot of hard stuff to work with. So as long as it has a good story, stylistically, graphically, it looks good, and as long as the ambiance and the music is good, I will be happy.
Yeah, I would agree. For the most part, I'm pretty optimistic for it. I think it looks really good. The trailers so far that I've seen, honestly, I don't find little faults with it. Like a lot of these super nerd Lord of the Rings are doing, guys out there. I think that's dumb. That's just setting yourself up to have a bad time with what should be a good time.
Yep.
So I'm going to be optimistic here. And say I'm super excited for it, for one, and my expectations of it are for it to be Pog, especially knowing with what's coming, knowing what we can potentially see. I'm incredibly excited for, and I think we will see it. So my expectations for this are high in a good way, if that makes sense. The only thing that'll disappoint me is the injection of our politics into it, and if they completely throw away some shit and say, yeah, Galadriel's the one who fucking force ring powers, well, the fucking Celebrimbor and fucking Avatar. No, it's Galadriel because women power. No, dude. Like, fucking stick with the shit. As long as they do that, I'll be happy.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult because I bet they're going to combine some characters like they did in the Lord of the Rings. Combine some characters just to make it easier. Yeah. So I honestly
also, I find Galadriel hot. I think she's hot.
So I agree with you. I think if people are expecting to see a 1-for-1 copy, they're going to be very disappointed. So don't set yourself up for a bad time like that. Yep. Expect changes and just let's hope for, I hope for a good story.
At the end of the day, just see what Stephen Colbert says about it, because he's the go-to expert on what Lord of the Rings should be. So
he's the expert.
Yeah, he's the biggest. Colbert. He's the biggest fucking Lord of the Rings nerd.
I've seen clips of him that he is a mega fan. But yeah,
I was also in the Hobbit. He had a cameo.
Oh, did he? Did he? I don't remember that.
But yeah. So all in all, this was Nick and Ray. Our expectations for Lord of the Rings: The Ring of Power. Watch it September 2nd.
With that, everyone, thanks for watching.